We're ready for the start. They're off.
Welcome in, everybody, to It's Official. Jeremy Plonk and Jeff Siegel on Run Happy Santa Anita Derby Week. Jeff, I'm sure the San Gabriels are smiling down on the great race place this week. You're going to give us great weather, right?
Right, we are. Finally, the rain has moved out. Beautiful day today. I'm pretty sure we're going to have the same on Saturday. Dry and fast, and the San Anita Derby this year is going to have an impact, I think, on the Kentucky Derby because there is at least one and maybe even two, maybe even three colts that have a chance to go to Kentucky and perform very well. But with Practical Joke, the favorite, going to be here, and I think he's right up there near the top now based on what I've seen. Not only from him, but what I've seen in the previous preps we've had. So it's a very important edition of the Santa Anita Run Happy Derby.
And I'll tell you what, I mean, we talk Triple Crown horses this time of year. We take 5 topics, and they are overloaded with the 3-year-olds because it's that time with 3 major preps coming up this weekend, the Wood, the Bluegrass, and the Santa Anita Derby. You obviously have a lot to talk about there looking forward. But as we look back to last weekend, we had the 2-year-old champ in action. We had the Arkansas Derby, but we started Gulfstream Park with Forte and the discussion of time after time. And our apologies to Cindy Lauper on this one. It's about the time with the Florida Derby. What was it? How did it change? And how fast did Forte run in his victory? Well, he ran just fast enough.
Up on the outside, it's Forte. He's starting to get to work now. He's about 8 lengths off this loose leader with 5/16 remaining. Fort Bragg tries to sneak away. He has the lead by 2.5. Mr. Ripple, he's now second. Cyclone Mischief moves up on the outside third. Forte's locked in as Mage begins to roll from the back. They race past the quarter-mile pole in the Florida Derby, and Mage got the jump on Forte as he goes to get Fort Bragg. Cyclone Mischief is fighting hard. He's still right there. Less than a quarter of a mile to come, and Cyclone Mischief, he's up for a fight and tries to turn away Mage. Forte better hurry up. Final 16th of a mile. Forte starts to gather in the top horses. Here comes Forte. This is going to be very close, but the champion prevails. Forte wins over Mage with second. Third, Cyclone Mischief. Then Mr. Ripple, Fort Bragg for the high 5. He gave you a scare, but he got it done. On to Louisville for Forte.
So the 3-10 favorite delivers on the promise of the bettors, the promise of his resume. But did he deliver a dominant performance enough to make you think that he is unstoppable in the Kentucky Derby? Jeff Siegel, the final time adjusted from 148.51 to 149.37, about 4 or 5 lengths slower than the initial clocking. There was a beamer timer. The beam was tripped for the finish timer, so they had to adjust it and clock things by hand. So what do you make of this, Jeff? Is it about the time? Am I supposed to look at my watch? Am I supposed to look at the video? Where do we go from here?
See, that makes it difficult because visually he looked very good when he was able to lengthen out in the final 16th of a mile. And originally, when we looked at the time that was posted, the last furlong was 12.16. That is flying. And there was no reason at the time to doubt it other than the fact that, wow, I mean, he looked like he was beaten. And all of a sudden he quickens and he explodes and he goes and, 12 flat roughly for the final 8th. And then we find out the next day that it was actually 13 seconds. So maybe he wasn't flying as much as we thought he was flying.
Right.
Maybe Mage was just getting tired, which he had a very, very much of a right to do. So all of a sudden, the context, just because of the time, takes a little different stance here. And I wonder now whether Mage came back to him or whether, Forte actually lengthened out. And that puts a little bit of a question mark because the overall buyer number of 95 is very, very average, actually, for this kind of a colt at this stage of his development with the final prep for the Kentucky Derby. So I don't know. And you may have a more definitive feeling about this because visually I thought he had a good trip. I was a little bit disturbed by the fact that Mage went by him like he was standing still at the quarter pole.
Yeah.
It didn't look to me like there was a lot of quickening in there. And then when he rallied, I gave him credit. No, I'm not so sure what to do. So I want to have your input on this. Maybe you can influence my opinion because I need some help on this.
Well, look, I think he's the horse you thought he was going into the race coming out because
Mhm.
circumstances weren't perfect. He wasn't at his best. He was Michael Jordan with the flu against Utah, I mean,
Mhm.
but he still hit the buckets that needed to be hit. And I
Right.
think that's kind of what we're talking about. Good horses do what they're supposed to do. Now, they can do that against less than great horses, right? That you can still win, kind of sap down a little bit and beat Mage and Company, Cycle and Mischief in that group. The Kentucky Derby field will be the all-star game, right? All the best horses from all the regions will be there. Can you do that against the best horses from the Midwest, the best horses from the West, the best horses from the East Coast? Now it becomes that effort won't win, right? We know that. That
Right.
effort there will not win the Kentucky Derby. But are we to know that that is where he is in his form cycle right now? Or was this a race where, look, they were 3-10? They were from the outside post. They had already proven he was back in a big way in the Fountain of Youth. This race, he had the qualifying points, right? He already had 50 in the bag from the Fountain of Youth. So they didn't need this race. And it's come pretty custom in the last decade or so that a lot of the top Derby horses just buzzsawed through everything, right? They were undefeated as 3-year-olds, the California Chromes, horses like that. They just ran the table and they were impressive doing so. And they got to Louisville super razor sharp. But once upon a time, getting beat in your last prep wasn't that bad of a deal, right? You didn't
Right.
want to just completely drain the horse 3, 4, 5 weeks out from the Kentucky Derby and leave your best race in Lexington or your best race in Hallandale or your best race in Arcadia. So if you look back, I mean, this was just an okay on the face effort. But for development for the Kentucky Derby, many years this would be a positive. He did not have to give everything he had. He ran hard the last, quarter of a mile, yes. But this, for a closer, it's different, right? If a front runner struggles to win, they went fast early and they put out all the fractions and they took all the heat and then they were just barely good enough to hold on to win. That's a draining effort to me. If he's a front runner, you're more disappointed with this effort. But as a closer, he didn't do much the first half of the mile, first half of the race. So he only kind of laid it down a little bit at the end. That's what you want to see. Now with Pletcher, when he had horses who won this race in recent years, Audible and Company, Known Agenda, they were back on the workout tab 13, 14 days after the Florida Derby. They prepped 3 times towards Louisville. That's what you assume Pletcher will do again. Same timing, same kind of horses, same races. So with Forte, we're going to find out 13, 14 days from now. Is he back? Is he working strong? Does he look like he's got life to him? That second work then, which will come about 21 days from now, is the key work for the Kentucky Derby. Not the one the week before the Derby, the one 2 weeks before the Derby. The 2-week out work is the big one. That'll be his second. That'll come up in 21 days approximately from now. That's the one where you're going to know whether or not that stretch run was real or if it was a foe, and I think that's where we're going to find out. Where is he in his form cycle? We will know in 21 days, I think, in that workout, that second workout from the Derby. If he looks fantastic in that, that means he wasn't tight in this race and he won it despite. If he doesn't look great in that workout, you might say the shine's coming off the apple a little bit and he regressed and he continues to regress. Then you'll want to take your stand against him. But time after time is the theme here, Jeff, as we talk about the final time of the race. But I think the time of the work and the timing of the workouts to come are really important with Forte, and that's what we want to watch going forward. Is he still the number 1 ranked contender? Yes. Somebody's going to have to run a race this weekend that blitzes off the page, a Bodie Meister kind of Arkansas Derby kind of effort that we saw back in the day to change that. Otherwise, this horse is a clear-cut favorite for the Kentucky Derby. Forte, the resume speaks for itself. I mean, he is a 4-time Grade 1 winner. He'll be the second favorite in the Kentucky Derby in all likelihood for trainer Todd Pletcher. The only time in his career Pletcher's had the Derby favorite was Always Dreaming, and he punched that home. Florida Derby's had 34 winners of the Kentucky Derby, most of any prep all time. He's coming out of the right race. But 5-2 is the final wagering choice in the 6th and final Kentucky Derby future wager, Jeff Siegel. I think now that 5-2 is a bad looking price in the 40-horse pari-mutuel that far out because I don't think Forte is going to flirt anywhere near 8 or 9-5 like some of the discussion might have been. That hasn't happened at a 20-horse Derby field without the pari-mutuel field involved. You go back to Point Given being 9-5. That was, 16, 17 horses back in 2001 when he was bet that hard. Forte's 5-2 in the Kentucky Derby, even if he won that race fairly convincingly. And now that he didn't, the door's kind of cracked open. I mean, I think you could see Forte as like a 7-2 favorite maybe in the Kentucky Derby.
No, I think you're probably right here. I was expecting after the Fountain of Youth that he was on his way to being a very short price favorite.
Agreed.
6-5, 7-5. Now we'll see what happens in the Santa Anita Derby if whoever wins that race does so in such a manner that would suggest that he's on equal footing. But, he's going to drift. There's no doubt about that. There will be enough doubts that maybe he isn't all that. And as far as him working well, Pletcher's horses generally are not going to work out there in 58 shades. He doesn't train that way.
Right.
So whatever he does, he's not going to do anything flashy. He may do exactly what Todd wants him to do, which would be great. But I don't think he's going to tip his hand in any way that all of a sudden he's going to wake up and go down there and win by many, like a Barbaro or whatever, a Big Brown. To me, there's enough doubt here where people are going to start looking elsewhere. And by the way, I made a statement a couple of weeks ago that has changed. I was of the opinion that the contenders for the Derby now at that time were few and far between. You could go 3 or 4 deep, maybe. After that, you're kind of stretching it a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, after watching what happened in Dubai and watching what happened in Arkansas and in Florida, and what I think might happen at Santa Anita, all of a sudden there are quite a few contenders that I didn't give enough credit to, and even the Wood Memorial might have a winner there that might catch the eye. So this is becoming a much more wide open Derby leading into the last month than I thought, and it's exciting because we have a lot of options to choose from.
Yeah, that's welcome change. That's what you want. If it just looks like a funnel and we're going to a Derby where there just aren't many options, who wants that? I mean, we want a little bit of chaos as we get to the big one. Interesting point, too, with the 5-2 favoritism for Forte in the Kentucky Derby Future Wager. Todd Pletcher's horses are the first, second, and third favorites in the Derby Future Wager. Tapit Trice is also in there, and King's Barnes. King's Barnes, the second choice in the Kentucky Derby Future Wager, around 10-1, and 11-1 was Tapit Trice, who runs this weekend. In the Bluegrass Stakes. So Pletcher's got the 1, 2, 3 favorites. At the beginning of the year, as strong as Baffert looked, he won everything in January and early February at Santa Anita. I mean, he ran 1, 2, 3 in all the prep races in January and the start of February with his barn. And Brad Cox was winning everything in sight. In fact, Brad Cox won, I believe, 5 major preps between Fairgrounds and Oaklawn this year. But it's Todd Pletcher who's got the 1, 2, 3 public choices right now. Before we turn from our time after time segment, Jeff, I want to give you a little musical tip. I know you're a Cyndi Lauper fan, and that's why we did the time after time. But Willie Nelson does an absolutely incredible remake of Time After Time. If you can find it somewhere, I'm going to give you a little musical tip for your afternoon enjoyment. Willie Nelson's version of Cyndi Lauper.
That's a great tip.
Not exactly what you would expect, but it's great.
All right. Well, I'm going to check it out. As soon as we're done here, I'm going to go search for it. I'm older than you, but we're both the product of the 80s, I think. So we go back with fond memories as to at least when I was in the prime of my life. I'm still going strong, but still,
I haven't hit my prime yet. I got time.
No, you're
Let's go to number 2. The Empire Strikes Back. We're back in the 80s again here. Darth Vader got it handed to her in the Gulfstream Park Oaks over the weekend, but another Empire was able to strike back. It was Angel of Empire in the Arkansas Derby. Let's go back to one of the more impressive visual performances of the season.
Angel of Empire is within range if he's good enough on the outside, and he is starting to move now. Angel of Empire is racing with Rocket Can toward the outside, and then comes King Russell and Interlock Empire. Dropping back and out of it is Bourbon Bash. Red Route 1 enters the stretch, 10th and last, as they straighten away in the upper stretch. And Angel of Empire has ranged into the lead here. Two Eagles River drops back on the inside. Toward the outside, King Russell is running on. Reincarnate in the second flight with Airtime and Rocket Can. Angel of Empire and Flavian Pratt. Angel of Empire wins the Arkansas Derby and wins it clear. King Russell was up for second. It was tight for third between Reincarnate and Rocket Can.
Vampire, take a look at the bio card on this one. Now a two-time graded stakes winner in a mile and an eighth, won the Risen Star at Fairgrounds with that long stretch, and won the Oaklawn feature, the Arkansas Derby, a little bit shorter stretch there, but just as effective. In fact, if they'd had a longer stretch like Fairgrounds, who knows what the final margin may have run up to, because, Jeff, this colt went under 37 seconds, a high 36, final 3 furlongs. That is absolutely fantastic. Arkansas Derbies usually come home in 39. This was really fast on the come home time, almost flawless on dirt. And boy, what value did you get in the Kentucky Derby future wager pool? They closed the future wager at 6 o'clock. This race ran about an hour and 50 minutes later. 29-1 in the final Kentucky Derby future wager. I dare say after this race for Angel of Empire and the impact Brad Cox has had on all the big stakes races around the country, this horse is going to get bet on Derby Day to some extent. He's 9, 10, 11-1. He's not 20-9-1 on Derby Day. You got some value if you fished early.
Definitely do. By the way, I mean, in watching that replay, and again, we talk about what the paper says, what the clock says, but you got to go what your eyes say too. Mm-hmm. And Angel of Empire did that, maybe using 75 to 80% of his power, of his energy, mm-hmm. of his strength. He wasn't really knocked about at all in the final furlong. I mean, once the race was determined, I mean, I thought that he just kind of coasted home and was, one was something that was a perfect plot. He did enough to be fit, but there was no draining of the energy there. And Angel of Empire, to me, and I think Pratt wrote him perfectly, he is coming. He's another one of these horses that looks like he's on the upgrade. He'd won at Oaklawn. I mean, he was second at Oaklawn. He won at the Fairgrounds, which is obviously not turning out to be a good thing, winning down there, winning the Risen Star. And to do it the way he did it, and being by Classic Empire, he looks like a colt that's going to get better with age, and he looks like a colt that'll go 1.25 miles, no sweat. And he's also a horse that can close, but he doesn't come from 1,000,000 miles back. I mean, he can lay somewhere in the middle. He circled the field. He won with something left. The number was strong. In fact, according to Timeform USA and the Equibase scale, it was actually a faster race than the Florida Derby, and he did it easily. So, yes, we have now found a new legitimate middle-price contender in Angel of Empire. I don't think he beat a whole lot in the race. The horse that was second, King Russell, was coming off a maiden win. Reincarnate was the kind of horse we looked at last week and weren't that high on either. So if you look at the field, maybe he didn't beat that much, but that's not his fault. He did what he had to do, and he's coming, and he's going to run better, and we'll see how high he can fly. Angel of Empire, a contender in the Kentucky Derby based on this race.
And you talked about Todd Pletcher not, asking a ton in the morning, so maybe on the clock we won't get a real sense of where Forte is. The Brad Cox horses can put down some times in the morning, Mm-hmm. I mean, they train a little sharper. Mm-hmm. So I think with Angel of Empire, this is the kind of horse we might see on Derby Week that gets a lot of buzz. He's got the potential to maybe be really sharp now, working 57-4, 58 and change. And all of a sudden, everybody's talking about him for the 10, 12 days leading up to the Kentucky Derby. The other thing, too, is I do think this is a factor. He will be based at Churchill. Brad will have him there shortly. And he's going to get a lot of look from the media and the Churchill publicity department and the video crews and all that, because he's going to be at Churchill a little bit longer than some of the other contenders with Brad being based there. So that always helps build up a little momentum, too. Both of his big works for the Derby are going to be over the track at Churchill, whereas we'll probably see Forte down in Florida come up and get one move over the Churchill strip. So it just gives you a chance to build momentum in public favor, and that always kind of builds and culminates with what happens in the win pool on Kentucky Derby Day. So the Empire struck back for sure. Sorry, Darth Vader, I didn't mean to bring you down after your defeat, but that's the kind of week that it was for the Empire and for Darth Vader. Let's go to topic number 3 this week on the big board. We're talking Kentucky Oaks. Yes, Darth Vader was defeated down at Gulfstream Park in the Oaks, but the big Oaks race last weekend came from Wet Paint. She has looked absolutely phenomenal at Oaklawn. The first half of the race when Wet Paint's involved, Jeff, just go get a cotton candy, get yourself a cold beer, something like that, because you don't need to show up until the top of the stretch.
A length and a half to Wet Paint, and she's starting to gain to mid-pack from the outside with just minimal urging. And then the back two are Take Charge Brianna, and now she's looking lucky, has dropped back all the way back to trail it. They swing for home. and wet paint is looming on the extreme outside here. Olivia Twist is running a big one. Grand Love on the inside and Condensation. And wet paint from last has swept by in mid-stretch in the Fantasy. Wet paint is drawing clear. Taxed is moving on by Olivia Twist into second. Wet paint has swept the 3-year-old filly series here, and she's on to the Kentucky Oaks.
As mentioned by Jim Byers, she swept the series. The Martha Washington, the Honeybee, the Fantasy, none of them in doubt at the end. All of them in great peril at some time in the races. She just waits and then makes the move and blows on by. Jeff, I thought last year we had seen this filly. Her name was Secret Oath, right? Coming from back of the pack with those sweeping turn moves at Oaklawn. She'd go on to win the Kentucky Oaks. I'm not so sure we're just not going to see a replay. This looks like Secret Oath all again headed back to the Oaks in the form of wet paint.
Well, the good thing is that she's proven now she can actually run on fast ground, something she never had a chance to do. Previously, she's running on sloppy, wet fast, sloppy, grass, and all weather. So finally, yeah, I can do that too. I can run on the dirt. Don't worry about that. Daughter of Blame and Out of a Mare by Street Cry. I mean, that's a classic Oaks type of pedigree.
That's a Churchill Downs pedigree if I ever heard one, right? I mean,
exactly.
Breeders' Cup Classic on top of Street Cry was the Stephen Foster. So yeah, that's Churchill on Churchill there.
Right, and the way she did it, I mean, so confident, and you know, Pratt knows that whenever he pushes the button, she's going to give it to him. And another thing I like about Wet Paint is that as a deep closer, she doesn't have a short run. She's got an extended run, so you can actually kick her in gear at the 3/8 pole and know that she's going to just keep continued on. The way she ran this race, now her numbers aren't flashy, but this is one situation where I'm going to believe my eyesight more than the numbers, because she seems like when you have a deep closer that gets up in the final 50 yards or so, you figure, well, you know, maybe they came back. She's way out of it, and she's in front at the 8th pole. I mean, you know, she doesn't need that. The longer the better is going to be fine, but it's not like she's needing all of the distance to finally get up. She's up in plenty of time. And it's going to be really interesting to watch the Santa Anita Oaks this weekend, one of the features on Saturday along with the Derby, because we want to see if Fazia, who has got a similar situation where she's undefeated, numbers are okay, not great, but I've watched her train. She looks unbelievable. And if Fazia were to go out and win Saturday and have an East versus West kind of confrontation, that would spice up the Oaks. And at this stage, I'm not going to put it past Fazia, but I want to see that race Saturday where I come up with, because I know what I think of Wet Paint. She is fantastic.
And then at Keeneland, we've got the Ashland for the 3-year-old fillies, where Wonder Wheel is that one. She's a front runner, you know, so maybe Wet Paint's can actually get some pace to run at for once. I mean, she's won these races without a lot of front end setup, you know, and the Kentucky Oaks almost always has a good, strong group of front runners to it. So this should be a very interesting. We're going to find out more about the Kentucky Oaks division for sure after Saturday with the Santa Anita Oaks, with the Ashland at Keeneland, because down at Fairgrounds this year, they ran 3 major prep races and all 3 went to different horses. They took turns trading the baton around down there. Some big horses like Who's Your Filly got nothing down there. So, the division we've been saying for a while is looking for its leader. It is founded in Wet Paint, but we will see where the challenge from Fazia comes and where the challenge from Wonder Wheel comes, where those 2 fillies stand after grade 1 appearances coming up on Saturday. All right, we're going to get back to the 3-year-old colts with our Triple Crown tracker. Done with the review portion of the show. Let's go to the preview, if you will, as we look ahead on the Triple Crown tracker to a big weekend of racing. We told you there are 3 Kentucky Derby preps this weekend. The Santa Anita Derby presented by Run Happy, the Bluegrass Stakes, and the Wood Memorial. Some of the top contenders expected to go in those. Practical Move and Go Rocket Ride for Santa Anita. In the Bluegrass, we'll see Tampa Bay Derby winner Tappet Trice. Blazing Sevens, last year's Champagne winner, completely laid an egg in his only 3-year-old race yet. We'll see if that Chad Brown trainee can bounce back. Of course, Brown won this race. The Bluegrass last year was Zandon. And then the Wood Memorial, where it's the Brad Cox show, I believe. Hit Show, who won the Withers coming off the pace. And Slip Mahoney, the runner-up, I believe it was, in the Gotham Stakes. So a little speed, a little closer for the Brad Cox tandem in the Wood Memorial. Each one of these races coming up on Saturday, the high-end scale for Kentucky Derby qualifying points, and all of these races will draw on Wednesday. If you're watching our podcast or listening, we recorded on Tuesday afternoon, so we're about 24 hours out from the draw from all all three of these major stakes races on Saturday. Jeff, let's talk about the impact of where we need to go here with Saturday's races. What are you looking for in the Santa Anita Derby, the Wood Memorial, and the Bluegrass Stakes? Anything in particular stand out to you?
Yeah, these are critical races because neither one has a slam dunk in it as far as I'm concerned. Although the San Diego Derby I'll talk about in a second, but Tapit Trice, I want to see him in the Bluegrass because I want to see if he can get out of the gate and get a favorable position. I don't think he's good enough to do what he's been doing against the horses that he has to beat now from here on in. You can't give away 5, 8, 10 lengths at the start. And it's not just because he's not breaking well. He just doesn't get going. He just can't get into stride. Now, he's got a long extended run, which works against inferior horses. But I'd love to see him pop out of the gate. I'm not expecting him to go to the front, but I want him to stay fairly close, somewhere at least in the middle of the pack. That wouldn't be asking too much. And then go on from there. If he can do that, then all of a sudden going 1.25 miles, his chances increase dramatically. As for the Wood, I like Hit Show. I think that's a nice colt. Candy Ride colt. I think that he's got a chance to produce another forward move. There's not a doubt in my mind that he's 1.25 miles type of horse.
Right.
The kind of colt, Jeremy, that is coming around. This is the next step up the ladder for him. It's not going to be quite as difficult a field as maybe the other two, but he still has a chance to be a really good colt. He might be able to do in this race what Angel Empire did in Arkansas. So that's going to be a really interesting race. As for the Santa Anita Derby, Practical Joke is a really, really good colt. I'm not so sure. I'm not about yet to say this, but I'm not so sure he's not the best colt in the crop. I really do. The way he continues to train, the way he continues to run. And he's going to have to run well because Go Rocket Ride is a really good colt.
Right.
Lightly raced, just 2 starts. This time they're going to let him roll out of the gate, and you put him on the lead, man, he might not be catchable. That's how good I think he is. So I think one or the other or both are going to make very favorable impressions in the race, and they'll both head to Kentucky, and we'll see what happens from there.
XBTV was on hand the other morning for Practical Moves workout. Of course, everybody seemed to be on hand for this workout, including the entire stable area, Jeff. Let's pick this up because this is a really unique workout. We usually don't show 1.5 minutes of workout video, but here's Practical Move with the blue saddle towel for Tim Yaktine, the red blinking light. He's got a little couple company horses behind him. Take us through this move here.
Well, trust me,
they're not his company.
No, this was not planned at all. I mean, what happens is we've had so much rain and the track has been closed so many days that when they finally did open it up over the weekend, everybody worked. So it's hard to, and a lot of trainers like to work right after the break because they get the fresh ground. But then if half the backstretch has the same idea, this is what happens.
Yeah.
What I loved about this Practical Move, now he's laying, what would you say, fifth here in this group? But he
started in a solo workout, and he picked up the San Felipe Stakes midway through.
Jack took a look at his watch to make sure he isn't going too fast, because once you get hooked up and like this, the horse might think he's in a race, and he might try to pull. That's the beauty of Practical Move. Even though he's in a competitive situation here, he's such an easy ride. He's so smart. He's such a rateable kind of a horse. He wants to go, but the message is no. You're not supposed to go that fast, and the colt cooperates. He gets the message. You don't want me to go catch those horses? I'll be happy to sit right here. And after completing 5/8 and 101, watch the gallop out. He doesn't even look like he's taking a deep breath. He's just kind of galloping along here. He's going to eventually continue out all the way around to the 3/4 pole, 5/8 pole, and never takes a deep breath. This shows you how sharp and how fit he is. And, of course, his previous works in 59 and change were spectacular as well. He is really coming around. I mean, I expect the best race of his life on Saturday and perhaps even a better race than that in the Kentucky Derby. So he's the one to beat. But it's not a one-horse race because we've got Go Rocket Ride, now he's training a little differently, Jeremy, because Go Rocket Ride, they're breaking him off behind another horse, and he does not want to be rated. He's been pulling and throwing his head up in the air and stuff like that. He doesn't look anywhere near as good. But in a race, when he makes the lead, all that disappears. So I'm fearful of Go Rocket Ride if he gets loose in the lead because he's a really good colt.
We talked about how fit and the wind and how easy that Practical Move just had in that workout. But it's the mind. How many horses would not have gotten in one of those 7 different scrums that were going on during the course of that prepared solo move? I mean, to not get into the bit and not get cranky and not get over anxious and just take the cues, it was very much like his San Felipe win, where he was buried down on the inside behind horses and wanted to go, but not fighting, and just waited. And then when it opened up, through the rail, explosion, and won the race. This was like the same race over again in the morning. No money on the line, but that his mind is that good. Boy, is that a benefit when we get to the Kentucky Derby. 20-horse field, all the chaos, everything that goes with it. The mental aspect of it, I'm no horse whisperer. I know there are people who do things like that, but when you see that from Practical Move, that's what you want to see, right? I mean, that's the mindset that you want to see. Now let's look at in our Triple Crown tracker where we stand in the Kentucky Derby picture right now. This is a big list, so let me break it down for you a little bit. We start on the left with the horses who are done racing and in the field for the Kentucky Derby based on points. There are a dozen of those runners from Forte all the way down through Continuar. Continuar won the Road to Japan Kentucky Derby Challenge, so he's in regardless of the points, and they do want to run. There are 12 horses of the 20 spots already finished running and with enough points. 3 horses are done running, but they're kind of sitting on the bubble right now. Major Dude, the runner-up at the Turfway. King Russell, the runner-up in the Arkansas Derby. Disarm, the runner-up in the Louisiana Derby. They're all kind of hoping other horses don't accrue more points. Now you got some horses who are safe in terms of points, but they still have a prep yet to run. Practical Move, he'll run in the Santa Anita Derby. Confidence Game, he may or may not run. We're still waiting to hear 24 hours out from entries. He may just train up to the Kentucky Derby, but with 57 points, Keith DeSormo has that luxury to run or not. Raise Kane, the horse who won the Gotham Stakes, is expected to run back in the Bluegrass, as is Tappet Trice, who's got 50 points and expected to run in the Bluegrass. So if you take 12 that are in, the horses on the bubble get you to 15. These 4 horses, you're looking at 19. There's only 20 spots. That means the horses running on Saturday, not on this list, they've got to do something, Jeff. They've got to win their way in, or at least run top 2 or 3 and get some of those points. Because again, third place is worth 30 points here as we hit to this weekend. 100 to the winners, 40 to second, 30 for third. You got to be 1, 2, 3 in one of these final couple preps on Saturday to have any chance if you're not already on that list.
Yeah, but if you don't finish 1, 2, or 3, some of these horses looking out, they probably don't belong anyway. But but on the other hand, you got work to do, as you say, and so these prep races, it's like the Elite Eight. You're trying to get to the big dance, but you got to show up and win that last that third to last race. Yep. This one is the last race. It's a similar situation, but it does emphasize again how much deeper this group appears to be now than it did a month ago, or just even 2 weeks ago. So that's why it's important. And every race is critical. Every race you're looking for some horse to step up, similar to what Angel of Empire did, step up and show that, hey, you got to hear from me. And we the horse that won the UAE Derby, very impressive, the Japanese horse. He was like no on nobody's radar, and all of a sudden he's saying, that horse has got a shot. You better respect that horse. And there's a few others like that as well. So anyway, it's coming up to a great weekend of racing, and between this end of this week and maybe even a race like the Lexington, who knows what that'll produce, if anything. But hey, it's a fun year. It's a lot. It's a lot more interesting than I thought it was going to be, and we've got some great racing ahead of us.
Let's go to our final topic this week on It's Official. It's our Stars of Tomorrow. We're always looking for horses out of the maiden or allowance ranks who could step up in the stakes races soon. We had Ultimate Gamble this past weekend at Santa Anita for Mark Glatt. Take a look at this one.
Ultimate Gamble takes the lead. We'll have to hold off Pelagio on the outside. Liftoff fights on. They're at the top of the lane. Ultimate Gamble. Liftoff not done. He's fighting on. And Pelagio in the center of the track. It's Ultimate Gamble. Pelagio now second. Ultimate Gamble, a length and a half. And it's Ultimate Gamble. He's been showing his class the whole journey. Ultimate Gamble with plenty left.
So, Jeff, what do you make of this one?
Here's a horse that brought $1.75 million in the 2-year-old in training sale. He's by Medaglia d'Oro and out of a mare by Ghost Sapper. He's supposed to get better with age and distance based on his pedigree. Last year, I remember watching him train at Del Mar. He was 3-1 in the maiden race. Finished fourth, got beat 12 lengths. But he was 3-1 in a race that had Cave Rock in it. Also a horse named Practical Move was second.
Not bad.
And then another horse named A Belief in This Living, who won last week. He was third, and he's a nice horse as well. He's an Arrogate colt, gelding. So that's the race that Ultimate Gamble came out of in his only one start last year at Del Mar. Now he comes back. He's trained well, not 100% cranked up or anything like that. And they run him a mile, and he wins like that. He's a 3-year-old colt. Now, he's not ready to take on the biggies in the division.
Right.
And I hope they don't ask him to do that. I mean, it's the Spring Classics. You figure, okay, let's go on another race. I'd love to see him come back on a now one as a 2 and become an Arrogate type of horse if he has it in him, which is to say, don't worry about the Triple Crown. Let's get him ready for the summer, late summer, maybe a Travers type horse, that type of thing. Let's let the other horses, do each other in, battle head to head, and we'll pick up the pieces. If he's allowed to do that, then Ultimate Gamble has a chance to be that kind of horse. But if they throw him into the wolves right off the bat, off a maiden win, then I'm not that optimistic that he's going to fulfill his potential.
Well, we'll see what happens. Not a lot for the 3-year-olds on dirt in Southern California between now and really the end of the year. And the Malibu Stakes, you got the Affirmed and some races like that, but not a lot of big money races for the 3-year-old dirt horses in Southern California. They might be forced to take their time with him and allow him to develop, which would be a good thing. That wraps up this week's edition of It's Official. These 5 topics on the board are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. We'll be back on Friday to handicap Run Happy Santa Anita Derby weekend with our first call podcast. Jeff and I will handicap 8 stakes races for you on Friday. Between now and then, we're going to have a lot of Santa Anita Derby coverage as well that you want to check out at firstbet, news.first.com and at expressbet.com in the blog section. Jeff, a lot of fun wrapping this one up. We got a Pennsylvania bred Angel. You got Angel of Empire, the Pennsylvania bred. I'm excited for that. Maybe the next Smarty Jones or Lil E.T. We'll find out headed to the Kentucky Derby. So good times here on the East Coast. Hopefully out west, you're going to enjoy a big weekend of racing at Santa Anita.
Yeah, hopefully a great racing this weekend around the country. Keeneland opens. I can't wait for that. You got the big day at New York with the Wood and, of course, out here at Santa Anita. So we are looking forward to a glorious week of racing, and we're going to be 4 weeks out from Kentucky after the dust settles this weekend.
We'll be back next week to wrap it all up again each week on Tuesday. It's official. I'm Jeremy Plonk for Jeff Siegel and everybody at First Technologies. Have a great week. Talk to you on Friday.